I returned home from a 3-day trip and my key didn't fit. "We can't let you in. You're not on the deed anymore," they told me. Then I checked my bank account and saw a 0 balance. I didn't cry. I took action. 2 hours later, my mother-in-law was sobbing because I was sure I'd gotten off on the wrong floor. Seriously. I was standing in the hallway of my Chicago condo with my suitcase after a business trip, staring at the door and thinking, "Liz, you're just exhausted. Go up 1 more floor and everything will make sense." Only 1 floor up there was no doormat with a pineapple and the word welcome-ish. It was right where it always was, at my door. At the door, my key suddenly didn't fit. I tried again, slowly, carefully, like the lock was offended and I needed to talk it into cooperating. Nothing. I called Eric. Once, twice, 3 times. Voicemail. I texted, "Eric, did you change the lock? I'm standing at the door. What's going on?" 2 gray check marks. And silence. At some point, a guy in pajama shorts with a dog poked his head out of the neighboring apartment. "Everything okay?" "Yeah, it's just that my husband apparently—" I nodded at the door. "Changed the lock and forgot to tell me." He gave me the look people give someone who hasn't realized they're getting dumped yet. "Good luck," he said, and shut his door. "Thanks, neighbor. Huge help." 10 minutes later, I was sitting in the building management office downstairs, suitcase at my feet and the same expression people wear at the bank when the teller says, "So, your account is actually empty, Mrs. The manager glanced at his screen. "Mrs. Gray?" "Miss, but whatever." "Yeah. Okay, look." He turned the monitor toward me. "The owner of the unit is Eric Gray. Just him." He said it casually, like he wasn't explaining that apparently I lived in my husband's condo, not the other way around. "How is it just him?" I asked. "I bought that condo before we got married. With my money." He shrugged. "There's a quick claim deed in the file. You signed over your interest 6 months ago." My face went hot. 6 months ago. Right when Eric had been pushing me to move the title into my name so the bank will do the business loan with the condo as collateral. "Liz, it's just paperwork. Don't you trust me?" Of course I trusted him. I was a smart woman with a degree, a good job, and a functioning brain. Smart enough to sign documents without reading them because the lawyer's handling it. "We can't let you into the unit," the manager went on, a little gentler now. "Legally, this is a domestic dispute. Without the owner's approval, no can do." Yeah, domestic dispute. Where one party is inside with my stuff, and the other is standing there with a suitcase and the news that the condo apparently never really belonged to her. I called Eric again. Voicemail. Then I called the one person he was more afraid of than the IRS and the FBI combined. His mother. Helen opened the door so fast it was like she'd been standing right behind it waiting. "Liz?" She looked at me, at the suitcase, and her mouth trembled. "What happened?" I tried to smile. "Looks like your son just unilaterally divorced me without notifying the other party." She stepped aside to let me in. "Come in. Take your coat off. You can tell me later, if you even want to." Helen's house always smelled like coffee and something cinnamon adjacent. In theory, that should be comforting. In practice, I was shaking. I dumped everything out on her. The condo, the lock, the manager, the quitclaim deed, Eric's dead phone. Somewhere in the middle, she sat down across from me and covered her face with her hands. "He finally went there," she said. "Damn his father." I knew about the father, sort of. The for the daughter-in-law version. In that version, Michael Gray was a charming businessman who got a little too creative with risky investments and maybe pushed it with the accounting. Then came federal agents, an investigation, a trial, big headlines, seizure of everything that wasn't bolted down, and Helen with teenage Eric moving into a tiny house on the edge of town and learning how to live without restaurants and boats. I thought, she looked at me with red eyes, that he hated what his father did. I thought so too. It's easier to love a man who condemns something than one who quietly admires it. "I'm going to file for divorce," I said, "and I'll find a way to get the condo back." Helen sighed. "Tomorrow morning we'll find a lawyer," she said. "Today, you're just sleeping here. You are not going to be alone. You hear me?" And just like that, in one evening I lost my home, my husband, and the illusion that I controlled my life. In exchange, I got a mother-in-law who very seriously offered me her old pajama pants with teddy bears on them. The lawyer was a kind, balding man in his 50s who looked at me the way a vet looks at a kitten that got clipped by a car but somehow survived. "Let's start with the bad news," he said, flipping through the folder. "You signed the quitclaim deed voluntarily. There's no sign of overt pressure in the paperwork. Legally, you gifted your interest in the condo to your husband." I nodded. Great. I was generous on top of everything. "Joint accounts?" he asked. My paycheck went into a shared account, but it was in his name, I muttered. It was just easier. He handled the bills. He typed something into his system and turned the screen toward me. "That account is at 0. Everything was withdrawn in cash in a few transactions." I stared at the 0.00 and thought I had never seen a 0 look so offensive. "Can we get anything back?" I asked. He sighed. "In theory, we could try to have the condo transfer voided as fraud. Argue that he misled you. That's a long, expensive fight. As for the money..." He hesitated. "You voluntarily transferred it into an account solely in his name. On paper, those are gifts or marital expenses." He paused, then added, "The good news is that you'll still have rights in the divorce. But the condo, odds are very slim." "Good news." Somewhere inside, a hysterical laugh flickered. I filed for divorce the same day. Adrenaline kept me upright for about a week. Then it wore off. Eric stayed silent. His phone stayed in voicemail-only mode. His social media was as empty as his bank account. His office was closed for renovations. Mutual friends shrugged. "We thought you two went away together." It was like he'd evaporated. But I had Helen. If you'd told me a year earlier that after my husband disappeared, I'd be living with his mother, I'd have smiled politely and moved away from you. But Helen and I turned out to be weirdly in sync. I worked, came back to her small house where she put dinner on the table and apologized for boring food. I dropped 2 sizes from stress. She did it on sheer stubbornness and pacing the house. By the 3rd time she called herself an old woman, I'd had enough. "You're not an old woman," I told her. "You're someone who had a con man husband, an idiot son, and way too much free time. Let's fix at least one of those problems." That's how Helen became an assistant at my company. Yes, I took my mother-in-law to work. Yes, it turned out to be the best HR decision of my life. She sat at the front desk, greeted clients, learned every delivery driver's name, and within a week was quietly managing half the office. "You do realize," our HR guy whispered to me, "that if Helen ever wants to stage a coup, we're all following her?" I just smirked. Honestly, better her running this circus than someone like my missing husband. Somewhere in this new rhythm of office coffee, snowy Chicago commutes, and nights watching shows in Helen's living room, there was Dave. Dave had worked with me for 2 years, senior analyst. The guy who could explain complicated numbers with crayons and somehow never sounded condescending. When Eric vanished, Dave was one of the few people who didn't either blame me or treat me like I was the next episode of a true crime podcast. He just set a coffee on my desk one day and said, "I don't know what you've got going on. If you need someone to drive you to a lawyer, I can be that guy. Or I can just stand there and pretend I'm your scary older brother." We laughed. I refused. But from that day, the coffee kept showing up. A couple months later, he asked, "There's a photo exhibit on Saturday. I accidentally bought 2 tickets. Want to help me not look like the weird guy who showed up alone?" "Accidentally," I said yes. At the exhibit, I caught myself laughing for the first time in a long while. Not the bitter, sarcastic kind, but genuine. Dave was different, steady, solid. The kind of man who didn't hide his phone when I walked into the room or put on a mysterious face every time it buzzed. "You know you're still married, right?" Helen asked one day when I came home from yet another coffee with Dave. "I know," I said. "I also know there's a man walking around out there who stole my condo and my savings. So let's just say I'm legally married and emotionally very much not." Helen snorted. "Fine. Just don't let him pay for everything. Let at least one woman in this story not be sponsoring a man." Helen wasn't exactly sitting out the romance game herself. In her case, not sitting out looked like George. A neighbor dragged her to the local community center for a veterans program. That's where she met a tall, silver-haired man with straight posture and the eyes of someone who'd read way too many reports. "He used to be an officer," she confessed to me like she was admitting a crime. "Some federal agency. Retired." "Like FBI?" I asked. "I don't ask," she said briskly. "It's enough for me that he's polite to waiters." What they had was calm. He picked her up from work, brought flowers for no reason, listened to her stories about being married to Michael, and pulling herself and her son out of the wreckage after his arrest. His younger colleagues still call him sometimes, she told me, for advice. His brain's still working. I was just glad. If federal agents are calling somebody for guidance, odds are that person isn't currently committing crimes. That was all I needed just then. 8 months after that night at the door, I got a letter in the mail. Cook County Circuit Court. Final judgment of dissolution of marriage. I stood in the kitchen, looking at the official stamp and thinking that instead of a stamp in my passport, I now had an 8-page document stating I was officially no longer Mrs. Gray. Helen silently pulled out her good wine glass. "What are we drinking to?" she asked. "To no longer being married to a man who changed the lock and turned off his phone," I said. "And to being dumb enough to still hope I can get my condo back." We clinked glasses. The wine was cheap. It tasted like my self-esteem at the time. The end of this story started, ironically, with an invitation to dinner. "I want to take the 2 of you out to a restaurant," George said one day when he came to pick up Helen from work. "We'll make it a little celebration. You, Helen, Liz, Dave, me, and one more person. Okay. Helen narrowed her eyes. You're not trying to set Liz up on a blind date, are you? Not exactly, he said. But I'd appreciate it if you both don't run out in the first 5 minutes. Not the most reassuring pitch, but I agreed. Maybe I was just tired of living permanently in waiting for bad news mode and wanted to see if there was yet another level. The restaurant was downtown. White tablecloths, the kind that instantly make me start calculating what this is going to cost. Outside, Chicago was pretending it knew what spring was. We were 4 at the table, me, Dave, Helen, and George. The 5th chair was empty. He's late, I tried to joke. So it's definitely not the IRS. Liz, Helen said quietly, staring over my shoulder. Don't turn around. Naturally, I turned around immediately. The 5th guest was not the IRS. The 5th guest was my ex-husband. Eric stood by the entrance looking pretty much like I remembered him, just older. Minus 8 months of expensive grooming, plus however many of sleepless nights. Same suit, same eyes. Just none of that easy, the world is in my pocket. Confidence. My hands went cold. I'm leaving, I said, grabbing my purse. George lifted a hand. Liz, please, give him 10 minutes. Then you can go if you want. Are you serious? I stared at him. You brought the guy who stole my home and my money, and you're asking me to give him 10 minutes. I know how it sounds, he said calmly. I also know the entire case file on him. I froze. Eric reached the table. Helen looked at him like she was trying to hug him and slap him at the same time. Dave's jaw clenched. He politely lowered his eyes to the menu. Eric stopped at my side. Hi, Liz, he said, voice rough. Thanks for coming. I came for them, I said. Not for you. He nodded, sat in the 5th chair, and spent a moment just shredding his napkin like he'd forgotten how to talk to people. I didn't just disappear, he finally said. They picked me up. Congratulations, I said. Sorry I wasn't there to clap. The corner of George's mouth twitched. He approved of that one. Remember when you asked what I actually did with those investors? Eric went on. I remembered. I'd asked. He always answered with something like, "It's boring finance stuff. You'd hate it." A couple years ago, one of the partners turned out to be an old friend of my dad's, he said. Same scams, 21st century version. Funds, shell companies, retirees putting their pensions into air. I looked at him and felt everything inside me going numb again, like I was being driven back to that lock that wouldn't turn. At some point, federal agents came to see me, he said. They already knew everything. About my dad. About the accounts. About the calls. They told me I had 2 options. Go down with everyone else or cooperate. And you chose option 3, I said. Rob your wife first, then cooperate. His jaw tightened. I agreed to work under their supervision, he said. To get deeper into the scheme, they needed someone on the inside. I was perfect. Michael Gray's son, with access to the right people. I felt sick. They didn't tell me, take your wife's condo, he said quickly. That was my idea. Fantastic, I said. That makes it so much better. For these people, family is a weakness, he said, words rushing out like he was afraid I'd stand up and walk. They needed to see I was willing to put everything on the line. The condo, the money, All those transfers, cash withdrawals, they were part of the cover. I had to look like one of them. He met my eyes. And yeah, I knew I was hurting you. I told myself I'd explain it all later, when it was over. Convenient, Helen muttered. Destroy your wife first, then explain. You get that line from your father, too? Eric flinched like she'd slapped him. The operation ended last month. George finally cut in. They were arrested. Several of them have already taken deals. Michael Gray is getting his second sentence. And Liz, he looked at me, you were listed as a victim in the case. I stared at him. And what does that mean, besides a nice word? It means, George said evenly, that the court is going to void the condo transfer as done under fraudulent circumstances. The condo comes back to you. As for the money, the prosecutor included it in restitution. It'll take time, but your savings will be repaid, at least partially. I looked from him to Eric and back. So this whole time, I said slowly, I've been living with your mother, thinking I was a complete idiot who signed a gift receipt for my own life, and you were playing spy games? I wasn't playing, he said quietly. I was working with them. Every day I woke up knowing I might not come back, that I could get burned. And every day I told myself I was doing it to fix things. And how do you think the fixing went? I asked. He swallowed. Badly, he admitted. For you, terribly. For Mom, too. I'm not asking you to take me back. He almost choked on the word I. I came to ask for forgiveness. For the condo, the bank, for leaving you on that landing with a suitcase. We sat in silence for a long time. Even the server was afraid to approach. And you? I turned to George. You knew all this and still thought a surprise family dinner was the move? I knew the investigation, he said. And I've watched how you and Helen live these last months. I couldn't tell you the details. That's not my place. But I could get you in the same room with them. Both of you. Helen exhaled slowly. You're still going to prison? She asked her son. Yes, he said. The plea deal is basically done. It'll be less time than it could have been, but enough to think. She nodded. Honestly, she said, that's the only part of this that sounds fair. Something in me shifted. It didn't collapse or magically heal. It just clicked, like the sound of a lock finally turning. I don't know if I can forgive you, I told Eric. And I definitely don't know if I'll ever be able to trust you. I get that, he said softly. But I do know this, I went on. That night at the door, I thought I was a complete idiot. That I'd handed you the keys to my life and somehow missed the moment you slammed the door. Now I see. Yeah, I was naive. But there were a couple of full-grown men in this story who could have designed an operation without turning a wife and a mother into collateral damage. George took that one on the chin, too. I'm sorry, Eric said. Really? And I'm sorry it took federal agents for you to figure that out, I answered. We never really got around to eating that dinner. At some point, I just stood up. I need to go home, I told Helen. Home. Her home. Not mine. Yet. We walked out together. The night was cool. Chicago finally remembered it's the Windy City. Helen pulled out a cigarette, looked at it, and put it back. I thought I'd want to smoke, she said. Guess not. Progress, I said. We walked a couple blocks in silence. Did you forgive him? She asked suddenly. I thought about it. You know, I said, I think I did. Somewhere deep down, for my own sake. So I don't have to carry all this crap inside. Are you going back to him? No, I said without hesitation. I can forgive someone. That doesn't mean I have to be his wife again. Helen nodded. I feel like that's very American, she said. You forgave him and filed for divorce. We both laughed. Tired, but real. A few months later, the court officially voided the condo transfer as fraudulent. The place came back to me. I stood in that same hallway where I'd once stood with my suitcase. Only now I had new keys and a new doormat. No pineapple. Just home. I sold the condo a couple months later. Not because anything was wrong with it. It just echoed too loudly. Dave and I rented another place closer to the park. Helen and George came over for dinner sometimes, bringing wine and news. Michael had his new sentence, Eric had his, Helen had a new haircut. Sometimes I think about that first night, about the door that wouldn't open. Back then it felt like the end of everything. Turns out it was just the moment someone changed the lock, and I finally decided that next time, the only person holding the keys would be me. So yeah, my ex-husband stole my condo and my savings, turned out to be an informant in a federal operation, ended up giving everything back through the courts, and still went to prison. I forgave him. I didn't go back. Sometimes I wonder, was I too harsh? Or just harsh enough? Thanks so much for watching and spending this time with me. If this story made you feel anything, anger, relief, satisfaction, let me know in the comments. I really love reading your thoughts. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss the next story. Take care of yourselves and your loved ones, and I'll see you in the next video. My parents bought my younger sister a luxury condo and handed me the mortgage. When I said no, they sued me for $250,000, just for raising me. They thought they'd scare me into paying. Instead, court exposed everything, and their lives started to collapse. Hi, my name is Erin, and I'm going to tell you a story that still makes people's hair stand on end when they hear it. Picture this. New Year's Eve, big family dinner, champagne flowing, everyone laughing. My parents stand up, raise a glass, and announce they've bought my younger sister a beautiful 2-bedroom condo in a nice complex. Then they hand me a folder, the mortgage, on that same condo. If you really love your sister, they say, you'll take over the payments. I said no. A month later, my parents did something I never imagined they were capable of. Ready? Here we go. I'm 32, and I honestly thought this New Year's Eve would be like every other. Same old apartment my parents have rented forever on the edge of Chicago. Same faded tinsel from the 90s. Same family drama over potato salad. God, was I wrong. But let me introduce the cast of this little play first. My parents are Linda and Frank Harris. Mom is 58, Dad is 61. They've been married 35 years and still live in the same tired 3-bedroom apartment on the far side of Chicago where I grew up. I've got a younger sister, Kayla. She's 27, but the way my parents treat her, you'd think she's 5. She has a boyfriend, Connor. They've been together 2 years. He's fine. A little too eager to lick my parents' boots, but that's what works in our family, so who am I to judge? It's always been like that. Kayla is our golden girl, our smart girl, our sweet girl. You'd think she cured cancer in a small town, the way they talk about her. In high school, I wanted to join a theater group. Mom just spread her hands. There's no money, honey. Sorry. 3 years later, Kayla wanted dance classes, and suddenly there was money for lessons, costumes, travel for competitions. Miraculously, senior year, I studied like crazy to get a scholarship so I could afford college. I did. Meanwhile, my parents paid Kayla's full tuition without blinking, plus her spending money. Textbooks, apartment, trips. No problem. Over the years, I got used to it. That's just how it was set up in our family. Kayla was the princess who needed to be pampered. I was the independent workhorse who would feed herself somehow. On December 31st, I drove over to my parents' place. The whole clan was already there. Uncle Dave and Aunt Nancy, Cousin Stan with his wife Olivia, and of course Grandma Helen, because nothing in our family happens without Grandma Helen. Everyone had already had a few drinks and was talking over each other. Standard Harris holiday. "Erin!" Mom grabbed me in the hallway. "How's work, honey?" "It's good, Mom. Really good, actually. I work in marketing at a big tech company. I make decent money, I rent a one-bedroom not far from the office, and I've been saving every dollar I can for my own place." "That's wonderful, sweetheart," Mom said, already looking past me toward the door, obviously waiting for Kayla. I went to the kitchen to help chop salad and listen to Grandma complain about how young people are nowadays. That's when I noticed something weird. My parents kept exchanging secretive glances and smiling like they were in on some private joke. When Kayla and Connor finally arrived, they almost started buzzing, whispering, fussing, shushing each other. Kayla was different too, glowing like a polished trophy, giggling, hanging off Connor's arm. "Kayla, what's got you so happy?" I asked. "Oh, nothing. I'm just in a great mood." She beamed at me. "Tonight is going to be insane. You'll see." I shrugged. Maybe Connor was finally going to propose. By 7, everyone was at the table. Mom had brought out the fancy dishes she usually just let sit in the cabinet and collect dust. Dad was carving the chicken. Uncle Dave told the same fishing stories as every year. Grandma Helen listed all the ways her joints were failing. Just another Harris holiday, or so I thought. I was halfway through my salad when Mom suddenly stood up and tapped her fork against her glass. "Attention, everyone! Can I have a moment?" she said. The table went quiet. Even Grandma paused in the middle of a story about her back. "Tonight is very special," Mom said, voice trembling with excitement. "Your father and I have been working on a surprise for months." Dad stood up beside her, grinning so wide you could practically see his molars. "We bought our Kayla a beautiful 2-bedroom condo," he announced, "in Maple Heights Residences." The whole table exploded. Uncle Dave started clapping. Aunt Nancy gasped. Stan and Olivia whooped. Even Grandma broke into a huge smile. "Oh my God! Really?" Kayla jumped up, but there wasn't a trace of real surprise in her voice. She knew. She knew the whole time. "Yes, sweetheart, it's completely yours," Mom said, already tearing up. "Your very own place." I sat there with my fork frozen halfway to my mouth, stunned. A condo. They bought her a condo. A whole freaking condo. "The closing's next week," Dad added. "Great neighborhood, everything nearby, a view of the park." Everybody talked at once, asking questions, offering congratulations. Kayla was showing photos on her phone. Clearly she'd already toured the place, maybe more than once. "It's like a dream," she gushed, hugging our parents. "Connor and I were just saying we're outgrowing our little place." "Well, you two are going to need more room soon," Dad winked. "The wedding's practically around the corner." More cheers, more toasts. Kayla glowed like the Christmas tree we still hadn't taken down in the corner. Connor kept shaking Dad's hand, clapping him on the shoulder. Everyone behaved like this was the best thing that had ever happened to our family. I clapped too. My hands just didn't seem to want to cooperate. They bought her a condo. I've been saving for years, counting every dollar, cutting everything extra, trying to get my own place. And they just handed her one on a silver platter. Right, Erin? Mom turned to me. Isn't it wonderful? Yeah. Great, I managed. Congrats, Kayla. Really. Kayla rushed over and hugged me. I'm so happy. I'm going to throw the best housewarming party. You'll freak out when you see it. You're all coming, right? I'm inviting everyone as soon as we get the furniture in. Everyone toasted Kayla's happiness again. And I realized some things just never change. Kayla would always be the favorite. I was just the background. Furniture. After dinner, everybody drifted off. The guys parked themselves in front of the TV to watch some concert. The women crowded around Kayla's phone, devouring every shot of the condo. The kids ran around high on sugar and new toys. I helped Mom with the dishes, trying to keep a neutral face. That condo really is nice, I said, loading plates into the dishwasher. It is, right? Mom practically glowed. We looked at so many places, but this one? It's the best. Kayla is going to love it there. I nodded and kept scrubbing. What was I supposed to say? About an hour later, I was sitting with Grandma Helen, listening to her catalog her new blood pressure meds, when Mom walked up. Erin, can you help me in the kitchen for a minute? Sure. I figured she needed help with dessert or something. But when I walked into the kitchen, Dad was already there, standing by the counter with a folder in his hands. They both looked serious, not excited, not proud. Serious. What's going on? I asked, suddenly on edge. Dad held out the folder. This is for you. I opened it. A thick stack of papers. Loan agreements, bank forms, payment schedules. What is this? I flipped through, confused. These are the mortgage documents for Kayla's condo, Mom said calmly. I stared at them. Okay. And why are you showing them to me? Mom shrugged like it was obvious. We had enough for the down payment, but we need you to handle the rest. Wait. I set the folder on the table. You want me to pay the mortgage on Kayla's condo? They nodded in unison, like they were explaining the weather. You have savings, Mom added. You said so. And you have a good salary. This isn't a big deal for you. That's how you can show you love your sister, Dad said. We raised you to help family. For a second, I honestly thought I'd slipped into some parallel dimension. I do have savings, I said slowly, because I'm saving for my own place. I was planning to buy next year. Erin, please. Mom folded her hands like she was praying. We're a family. We have to support each other. I shook my head. No, I'm not paying someone else's mortgage. I've worked like a mule for that money. I'm going to buy my home, not sponsor my sister's. Dad's face darkened in an instant. You don't even need a condo, he snapped. You're 32 and still alone. No husband, no kids. You're going to end up an old maid. Who's going to need you? The words hit like a physical slap. I just stared at him. Kayla is young and beautiful, he went on. She has Connor. She has a future. She deserves that condo more. I looked from him to Mom, hoping she'd say something in my defense. She stared at the floor. I am not paying Kayla's mortgage, I said, every word clipped. Selfish, Dad spat. I grabbed my coat and my bag. Erin, where are you going? Kayla stuck her head out of the living room, all glowing and happy with her free condo that I was apparently supposed to finance. I don't feel well. I'm going home. I walked out without saying goodbye. Behind me, I could hear my parents saying something to the guests, probably explaining why I'd acted out. The drive home was a blur. Dad's words kept looping in my head. Old maid, no husband, no kids. Like my entire life was worthless because I wasn't married. I parked near my building and just sat there. It was quiet in the courtyard. Everyone else was celebrating with their families. Upstairs, I poured myself a glass of wine, sat on my couch, and cried. That's how I met the new year, alone on the couch, thinking about all the ways my parents had always treated me and Kayla differently. It had been like this since we were kids. Thousands of little moments proving Kayla mattered more. Nothing had changed. January 1st, in the morning, my phone rang. Mom. For a second, I actually thought, maybe they're calling to apologize. Erin, we need to talk. Her voice could have cut glass. You made a scene in front of the whole family last night. We had to tell everyone you got sick. Are you serious right now? Tomorrow I'm bringing the documents over, she said. You'll sign them, and the payments will start this month. Mom, I told you, I'm not paying Kayla's mortgage. You will, she snapped. A sister helps her sister. No, I said, slow and clear. I will never pay for someone else's condo. I hung up. The phone rang again immediately. I didn't answer. Then again, and again. I turned the sound off. Then the texts started. Dad wrote about family duty. Mom wrote about how disappointed she was in me. I ignored all of it. The next day, Kayla called. Erin, I know everything, she started without even saying hello. How can you be so cruel? Cruel. My condo is more important than your plans. You'll save up again. You always do. I almost laughed. Kayla, do you even understand what you're asking? You want me to pay your mortgage for years because, what, you're the favorite? If you really love me, she said, you'll help. Or are you not family anymore? And what have you ever done for me? I asked. That's not the point. I need help, and look how you're acting. I hung up and immediately blocked every number. Mom's, Dad's, Kayla's. Enough. For the first time in years, I could actually breathe. A whole month passed in silence. No calls, no messages, no drama. I went to work, came home, watched shows, lived an actual normal life. I even started scrolling through listings again, checking out condos in new developments, planning, daydreaming about my own place. I thought, maybe they finally got it. Maybe they found another way. Maybe they decided to sell Kayla's condo. How naive. One Tuesday morning in February, I was getting ready for work. Shower, coffee, morning news humming in the background. Totally ordinary. Then someone buzzed downstairs. Registered mail, the mailman yelled. Nothing unusual. He always brings our building's mail on Tuesdays. But when I opened my box, tucked between utility bills and junk flyers, was an official-looking envelope with a delivery receipt attached. The return address made my stomach drop. Law and Shield attorneys. My hands shook as I opened it. Heavy paper, watermarks, seals, signatures, and the text. Dear Ms. Erin Harris, it began. Our firm represents the interests of Frank and Linda Harris in a matter regarding reimbursement of expenses for the support and upbringing of a child. Expenses for upbringing? What kind of nonsense? I read on. My parents were suing me for $250,000, $250,000, for raising me from birth to 18. I had to sit down right there in the hallway. This was insane. Completely insane. Parents don't get to bill their kids for raising them, do they? But there it was in black and white. They were demanding compensation for food, clothing, housing, medical bills, education, and, my favorite part, emotional support and parental care. They claimed I owed them because I refused to help my family in a difficult time, despite their years of sacrifice. I read the letter 3 times, trying to process. Of course, this was all about that damn mortgage. They were trying to scare me into paying for Kayla's condo. My first instinct was to storm over there, shake them until teeth rattled, scream that they'd lost their minds and that this was not how you treat your own kid. Then it hit me. That was exactly what they wanted. They wanted me panicking, begging them to withdraw the lawsuit in exchange for covering the payments. Absolutely not. I called Jason. We'd gone to college together. Now he was an attorney. Jason, it's Aaron. I need your help. Like yesterday. Hey, what's going on? My parents are suing me for $250,000, I said, for raising me. I told him everything. New Year's Eve, the condo, the documents, all of it. He listened quietly. Aaron, he said finally, this is insane. This isn't a thing. Well, they filed the suit. Is it even legal to demand money from your kid for raising you? They can try, but it's doomed. Parents are legally required to support their minor children under state law. They don't get to send an invoice 18 years later, he said. But we can't ignore this. You have to respond properly. No missing court dates. So what do I do? Bring me everything, Jason said. The letter, any messages, all of it. I'll file a response, we'll show up, and this will be over faster than your mom can say, family duty. After we hung up, I felt a little calmer. The shock didn't go away, though. My own parents had dragged me into court over a condo for Kayla. This wasn't even funny anymore. 2 months later, we were in court. I walked into the Cook County courthouse nervous but determined. Jason walked beside me, briefcase full of documents in hand. My parents were already seated at their table with their lawyer, a skinny guy in an expensive suit and a permanent sour expression. Kayla sat in the back row, drilling holes through me with her glare. All rise. Court is now in session, the bailiff called. Our case was assigned to Judge Margaret Ann, a woman in her 50s with a sharp suit, glasses, and the kind of eyes that see right through you. Case of Frank and Linda Harris versus Aaron Harris, she read. The plaintiffs demand from the defendant $250,000 in compensation for expenses related to raising her. Their attorney, Mr. Caldwell, stood up. Your Honor, my clients supported the defendant for 18 years, he began. They provided housing, food, clothing, education. They believe it is only fair to receive compensation, especially given the defendant's refusal to help her family financially now. The judge raised an eyebrow. Mr. Caldwell, are you seriously suggesting that parents can send their children a bill for doing what the law already requires them to do? Well, Your Honor, he tried again. The defendant has shown blatant ingratitude. That's not what I asked, she cut him off. I asked whether you believe parents have the legal right to demand payment from their children for raising them. He faltered. Technically, no, but then why are we here? She asked dryly. Jason stood. Your Honor, under our state's family law, parents are obligated to support their minor children, he said. They can't retroactively demand reimbursement for food, rent, or emotional support. This lawsuit is a bad faith attempt to pressure my client into paying the mortgage on her sister's condo. He handed over a bundle of documents. Here you'll find bank statements and transfers for the past few years. You'll see that the plaintiffs have consistently supported their younger daughter financially, college tuition, vacations, help with rent, while offering nothing comparable to my client, who paid her own way through school and has been supporting herself since 18. The judge paged through the file, expression hardening. So, she said to my parents, you paid for Kayla's college, her living expenses, and helped with her housing. Mom bristled. She's our baby. Of course we helped her. And you, the judge nodded toward me, got a scholarship, worked through school, and paid for everything yourself. I nodded. Yes, Your Honor. And now, the judge continued, looking back at my parents, You want the daughter you didn't support to repay you $250,000, while the daughter you did support pays nothing. Did I get that right? That's not, Dad started. It's not like that. How is it then? She asked calmly. He didn't seem to have an answer. The judge flipped back to the front page of the complaint. This case is dismissed, she said. Frank and Linda Harris, you will pay all court costs and both parties' attorney fees. Parents cannot demand compensation from their children for fulfilling their parental obligations. This lawsuit is unfounded and abusive. Her gavel came down. It was over. My parents sat like they'd been hit by a truck. Kayla was sniffling in the back row. Their lawyer was already stuffing papers into his briefcase, clearly dying to get out of there. I felt relief and grief tangled together in my chest. It was finished. But at what cost? Consequences came fast. Gossip in our neighborhood spreads faster than a grease fire. Uncle Dave called the very next day. Aaron, I'm in shock, he said. Is it true Frank and Linda took you to court? For raising me, yeah, I said. They wanted $250,000. They've lost their damn minds, he said. We had no idea. If we'd known, we'd have talked them out of it. Then Aunt Nancy called, then neighbors, then people from their church. Everyone was horrified. Grandma Helen was livid. I raised 5 kids, she said. Never once did it cross my mind to send them a bill. What are they even thinking? That's not parenting, that's some kind of scam. But the real hit was to my parents' social life. They'd been going to the same church for 20 years. Mom sang in the choir, Dad helped with repairs and organized fundraisers. Their whole social world was wrapped up in that place. And it collapsed overnight. People who had invited them to birthday parties and church holidays stopped saying hello. Mom was quietly asked to leave the church book club. Dad was removed from the church board. And then there was the money. Their lawyer had taken a $7,000 retainer for a case he lost at the very first hearing. Add court costs, add my attorney fees. Jason billed them the full amount, every hour. They didn't have that kind of money lying around. All their savings had already gone into the down payment for Kayla's condo. You can guess what happened next. 3 months later, Jason called. You won't believe this, he said. Try me. Your parents had to sell Kayla's condo. What? They couldn't keep up with the mortgage without your money, he said. They listed it on Craigslist and basically gave it away. They needed cash fast. I had the strangest feeling, half grim satisfaction, half pity. Kayla had lost the condo of her dreams. That part really wasn't her fault. She got crushed under my parents' insanity. Where is she living now? I asked. Last I heard, she and Connor are renting a small 1-bedroom on the outskirts. He's not thrilled. I pictured Kayla picking out paint colors, scrolling through furniture websites, planning her perfect life in that condo. And then, nothing. Back to a cheap rental. In a way, I didn't feel that sorry for her. She was completely fine with me paying her mortgage forever. So, no, I didn't exactly sob for her. Months went by. I went back to my normal routine. Work, home, saving. I even found a great 2-bedroom in a new building and started talking to the bank about a loan. Half a year after the trial, my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost declined. Something made me swipe. Hello? Aaron, it's Mom. I went rigid. What do you want? We need to talk. My heart jumped. For a split second, I thought, maybe they're going to apologize. I don't have anything to say to you, I said. Please, just listen. Let's meet and talk. Maybe we can forget all this foolishness and make peace. Make peace, I repeated. You dragged me to court and demanded $250,000. That was a mistake, she said quickly. We lost our heads. We were emotional. It was stupid. A mistake? I said. You hired a lawyer. You filed a complaint. You dragged me to court. I know, she said. But we're still family, Aaron. We have to get past this. Family. I sat down on the couch. You want to talk about family? I asked. Where was family when I was studying and working 2 jobs just to feed and clothe myself? Where was family when I was bouncing between crappy rentals? Where was family when I was counting every cent to build some kind of safety net? We were always there for you, she said automatically. No, I said. You were always there for Kayla. Only Kayla. I was the independent one who didn't need help, remember? That's not true, she said weakly. It is, and you know it, I said. And now that your golden girl lost her condo, suddenly you want to reconcile. Silence. Aaron, please, Mom said finally. Can't we just forget everything? No, I said. You showed me exactly who you are and what I mean to you. I'm not going to pretend nothing happened. But we're your parents, she said. You can't just cut us out. Parents don't sue their kids, I said. Parents don't call their daughter an old maid who doesn't need a home. Parents don't demand that one child sacrifice everything for another. We made mistakes, she whispered. These aren't mistakes, Mom, I said. This is who you are. You've always been like this. I just finally stopped closing my eyes. So you don't want to know us anymore, she said flatly. I looked around my apartment, my quiet, peaceful space. No screaming, no guilt, no constant pressure to throw myself on the altar of family. I liked this life. It looks that way, I said. I hung up. She never called again. 2 months later, I signed the contract on my own place. It's beautiful. Hardwood floors, big windows with a downtown Chicago view, a dream kitchen with a breakfast bar. Everything I'd been imagining all those years while I hoarded every dollar. My down payment was exactly the amount I'd been saving all along. The same money my parents had tried to rip out of my hands for Kayla's mortgage. I spent it on my future, my home. I'm 33 now, still single, still focused on my career. Maybe my dad was right. Maybe I'll end up an old maid. But if old maid comes with my own condo downtown and 0 toxic relatives in my daily life, I'll take it. I have my home, my life, my choice. No one can force me to finance someone else's dreams or shame me for finally putting myself first. Sometimes I think about Kayla and wonder if she ever realized what our parents dragged her into. Instead of a free condo funded by me, she got a broken family and a tiny 1-bedroom rental on the edge of town. But that's not my problem anymore. The most important thing I learned, sometimes the healthiest thing you can do is walk away from people who don't value you, even if they're your family. So what do you think? Did I go too far or not far enough? Let me know in the comments and subscribe for more.